Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be doing a full-on movie review for the movie Civil War, written and directed by Alex Garland, out in theaters right now. And let's dive right into this, shall we?
Modern movie review.
Alrighty, right off the bat, I want to go into this movie. Took me a little while to fully digest. I watched this movie a couple of days ago, and I'm finally coming out with the review. This movie was a lot. It was a very heavy film. It was very brutal, and I feel like there were a lot of sequences that just like gave my stomach like the biggest pit in my stomach I've ever had in my life. I really enjoyed this movie. I think it really was a giant emotional roller coaster all throughout the entire film, and I really enjoyed it. So I'm gonna dive deep into it. I'm gonna go ahead and issue a spoiler warning. If you haven't seen the movie, I definitely would recommend going and watching the movie before watching this review. But that being said, we're gonna get fully into this now. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about here is for one, I do want to address a couple of things before I get too far into this. For one, I have never seen an A24 movie before this one. This is the first one I've ever seen. A24 is a really huge film company. I know that they make so many original projects, and they really do a good job of like coming up with original stories and sharing movies that are completely original. They don't do sequels very often and stuff like that. So I've been trying to get into A24 films, and I definitely have a long list of A24 films that I need to watch. And I didn't know this was an A24 film until I went into the theater and it showed up on the title cards or whatever when this movie was first opening. So that was really pleasant. This is the first A24 film I've ever seen. So if I say some things like, oh my god, this movie is one of the most like incredible movies I've ever seen, and you guys are like, oh my god, it's not even like top 10 A24 movies. I've never seen an A24 movie before. Also, on top of that, I haven't watched a whole lot of horror movies, and something about my channel, for those of you guys who haven't seen my channel before, I've been trying to watch a lot of horror movies recently, and I've been trying to specifically go to the theaters to find horror movies, and I think that this movie is the first movie that ever actually gave me that terrifying feeling that I want out of a horror movie. And I think that that's really interesting because this is more of like a thriller, I believe, is what it would be labeled as. And I think that it's really interesting that this made me feel more fear and terror than any other movie I've ever watched before ever has, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. But now to get into the story a little bit, I like the fact that this movie didn't pick a side, red or blue. I think that a lot of people hear about a movie called Civil War, and a lot of the people who have been selling this movie online have been talking about how like, oh my god, it's a movie called Civil War, it's about an American Civil War in an election year. This is going to be a very provocative movie. It's going to kind of make a lot of people have a lot of intellectual debates online. It's going to make a lot of people question, you know, the side of the scales that they're on and stuff like that. And I really like the fact that it actually doesn't dive too far into politics at all. In fact, I would say that this movie is not political at all. And for a lot of people, you're going to hear that and you're going to be like turned off a little bit. You're going to be like, that's a little weird. What do you mean by that? And I was the same way. I watched this movie on Saturday, and usually I try to watch movies, you know, the Thursday or the Friday that they come out. So when I had already heard some of the reviews and a lot of the people talking about it on Friday and Saturday morning, a lot of the people who were talking about how, like, it's not a very political movie, it doesn't really pick a side and stuff like that, I personally was concerned. I was like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. I feel like a movie about a civil war, it has to have some kind of message, it has to be telling some kind of story, and you would expect it to be either, like, very passionately red or very passionately blue, or you would expect it to villainize a specific group of people, and it doesn't do that at all, which I really appreciate, because I feel like this movie definitely could have kind of stepped on eggshells a little bit here. I don't know if I used that saying correctly, but like, this movie needed to be dealt with very carefully, because it could have pissed off the wrong group of people, or it could have upset the other group of people, and either way, this was a very delicate movie to make, and it towed a very like solid line, and it had to be very careful, and I think that they balanced it perfectly. They don't necessarily call out any specific groups of people. They don't necessarily suggest who the evil people are, who the good guys are, because in the Civil War, no one really is good, no one really is evil. They're all just fighting for themselves, which I think is something that they did a really good job of showcasing in this movie. So for this film, we are following along with the journalists who are just trying to take pictures of the war, explain to people what's going on, and, you know, kind of make the cool headlining stories and be the people who get to like share all the glory of journalism, which I really like. I think that they do a really interesting job of showcasing how a lot of journalists, they want the coolest story of all time. They want to be able to take some of the most iconic pictures in history and stuff like that. And for them, it's very much like, yes, this war is going on. Yes, it's terrible, but we document this stuff. And that's what we're passionate about, is telling the stories that other people will not necessarily get to see. A lot of people kind of like bat an eye to some of the stuff that's going on in the war, but they don't care. They're taking pictures of it. They're doing whatever they can to share the media and share this message with the world, which I think is actually a really brilliant character archetype to be following for this movie. It does a really good job of giving us a neutral lens to look at this film through, and it also does a really good job of helping us see things from the perspective of just the everyman in this universe. We're not watching it from somebody who is on the military side. We're not seeing it from some of the random people who just happen to have gotten guns and stuff and started fighting random people. We're seeing it from the eyes of people who don't really care about this or that. They care about figuring out the truth and figuring out why people are fighting, which I really, really enjoy. So we start off this movie in New York, and there's some bombings and stuff going on. There's definitely a lot of people who are fighting each other, and you can't really tell exactly who's fighting who, but you can tell that like there's police who have the riot armor and everything like that. They're trying to prevent people from being even more angry than they already are, and it's just kind of a bunch of people kind of poking the bear with this one. There's a lot of people who are just aggressively protesting, and it becomes a giant battle because the police officers and the people who are just protesting end up fighting each other because one person went too far. And I think that it does a really good job of kind of showcasing the domino effect, because the majority of this war appears to be a couple of people who really, really wanted to, go against the United States government or whatever, stood up and they created an alliance. And then Texas had their alliance, and then California made an alliance, and then they all joined together to fight against the American government. And I think that it really does a good job of showcasing how this snowballed out of control. And originally it started off as just a couple of states wanting to kind of succeed from the nation, and it turned into something much, much worse. And something that I like about it is the president is only in this movie for a really short amount of time. He's played by Nick Offerman. I absolutely love Nick Offerman. I'll watch anything that he's in. And in this, he's very nervous. And you can tell that he doesn't have a lot of professionalism. He's kind of locked in the White House. He's not allowed out anymore. And every time he makes a speech, he's trying his best to kind of like be very calm and be very compassionate, but he's not very professional. And I think you can tell like the terror in his voice. He knows that his days are numbered, and you can tell that everything that's falling apart, he really wished he could do more to kind of like make things right, but he can't. And I think that the president has a very interesting character here. I feel like the fact that they left his like side of politics or whatever incredibly vague is very interesting. And we only get a couple of hints here and there about some of the stuff that the president specifically has done. So we understand why he would be considered a bad guy, but at the same time, we also have reasons why we would potentially be sympathetic for him, which I like as well. But overall, we're following these journalists. Like I said, they start off in New York, and they realize this war is coming to an end pretty soon. Within the next month, they're probably going to crash the White House, and the president is more than likely going to be murdered in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So they basically decide that they need a race to Washington, D.C., because of, their knowledge and their press people, and they have a lot of connections with other press people. They know, okay, there's a war front that's being fought here. There's a war front that's being fought here. There's a lot of problems. If we were to go just straight down to D.C., we can't really do it. So they have to go around to Pittsburgh and then take a really long route down to D.C. And because of this, we end up going on fun little adventures. Well, we end up going on adventures. I feel like fun was the worst word. I should not be using the word fun in this movie description at all. But they end up going through to Pittsburgh. They run into a gas station where there are people who are torturing other human beings, and it is very gruesome to see. You definitely see a lot of the darker sides of the war. It's people who are very defensive, and they're thinking that what they're doing is just defending themselves, and they're killing people who are looters, and the people who are looters are really just people who are trying to fend for themselves as well, but they just happen to draw the short end of the stick here. And it does a really interesting job of showcasing how humanity can very quickly turn into monsters in this movie. And that was something that I really liked about it, is that's one of the first stops that they make. One of the next stops that they make is at a refugee camp, and here we see a lot of people who are doing everything they can to kind of help people out. There's a lot of people who are gathered in this stadium, and they're all living in these tents, and they kind of have this sense of community, which I really, really love. We get to see a lot of people just being together and having fun and jump roping and just kind of like playing cornhole and doing this and that, and just kind of like keeping a sense of togetherness throughout the fact that the entire country is falling apart and everybody is at each other's necks right now. And I liked the amount of times we had little moments like that where it kind of felt like a little bit of normalcy in the war that's going on right now. And it did a really good job of kind of showcasing the lights and the beacons of hope throughout this very, very bleak world that we're currently in. So I liked sequences like that. There's another sequence that I really, really enjoyed about halfway through the movie. They end up getting caught up in like a little shootout that's going on. There's like this really weird trap that's outside of a mansion, and they realize that there's a sniper who's like shooting at these people, and there's also the people who are trying to shoot back at the sniper. And this is one of the funniest scenes I've seen in a movie in a really long time. And like I said, this movie made me feel like a pit in my stomach the entire movie. I was really stressed out almost the entire film. I was pretty terrified the majority of this movie. So to have a funny scene like this, it was really refreshing. But there's just this guy who's a part of the journalist who's like trying to get a lot of questions out of these people who are shooting at the guy who is in the house. And he's trying to be like, hey, what side of the war are you guys fighting for? Who's giving you guys orders and stuff like that? And the guy's just like, no one's giving us orders. We are shooting at the guy because the guy is shooting at us. And then he's just still trying to like grill them and get these like questions and answers out of them. Okay, sorry for that super awkward cut. My dogs kind of started going absolutely crazy, and I didn't know if the audio was going to be okay. But basically, like I was saying, they get kind of caught up in this little shootout, and basically one of the journalist guys, his whole mission for this entire journey is to go and interview the president. And you can tell that he's kind of more of the writer side. So he's trying to figure out, get like first person like accounts of what's going on in this war. So he's asking the people, like, hey, who's giving you guys orders? What are you guys doing? Why are you guys fighting this guy? And they say pretty point blank, like, we're fighting this person because this person is fighting us. We're shooting at them because we want to live, and the other person is shooting at us because they want to live. And it's a really interesting little moment that they have in the middle of the movie. And I really like the way that like these people who are shooting are like so tired of the journalists just trying to get these answers out of them. And then they turn to the new character who is like a new journalist or whatever, and she's very nervous and she doesn't have any like real big journalist experience yet. And they're just like, hey, can you explain what's going on right now? And she's just like, there's a guy in the house that's shooting at us. And the two guys who are like in the shootout or whatever kind of just turn to the other guy who's been asking them questions and just like, is it that hard to understand? And it's so funny how like it's such a simple scene, it's such a quick scene, and I just loved everything about it. But that being said, while we're currently on this specific topic, the guy who plays the journalist who's trying to ask him a bunch of questions, I thought he was a very great character in this. I think that he was a very standout actor. Almost every single scene he's in, he steals the scene. He's so charismatic, and he's the kind of person who kind of seems like they would get along with literally everybody. And I love it because there's a lot of moments in this movie where they're kind of like in danger. There's these really scary people who kind of are going to give them a really hard time. A lot of big scary men with guns, and he can just kind of like have conversations with them. He's very chill with them, and he kind of just gives off like ultimate dad energy. And I wanted to give a shout out to that actor. His name is Wagner Moura. I wrote it down. I don't know if I pronounced it right, but he was fantastic in this. I really loved his energy. Like I said, super charismatic, felt like a dad, felt very protective. And he just radiated so much positivity in this that even in some of the worst times where it really felt like everybody was in danger and everybody could have potentially died, he was there to kind of like keep the team grounded a little bit. And I really, really appreciated that. But now I'm going to kind of jump ahead a little bit. They end up getting to the Western Front's like front base or whatever, and they find out they're a little late. They're already crashing Washington DC, and some of the other journalists are already there. They're going to be getting live footage and stuff like that of the president being taken out. And our final act has pretty much everything you could want out of a final act here. There's a lot of really good action sequences. There's a lot of really great moments. Something that I really liked about this movie is a lot of the times where like pictures were taken, it would show the picture and then it would just go like dead silent. And I really loved a lot of those moments in here. And then in the final act, we have a character who sacrifices themselves for another character. And it's a very beautiful moment. It's a very emotional moment. And the person who is being saved by the person gets a couple of pictures of it. And it's a very, very dramatic scene. And it's very, very beautiful, and I really loved it, and it fulfilled one of my favorite tropes in movies, which is there being a reluctant hero, and Kirsten Dunst's character played that incredibly, incredibly well. But yeah, overall, I think that this movie is great. I think that it's definitely a really good movie that people should definitely check out. it's a fun combination between like a war film and, like I said, this felt like a thriller to me. It definitely felt like a kind of horror movie type, and I really, really enjoyed it, and would definitely recommend it to people. Like I said, you'll feel every emotion imaginable, because there are some like just cinematically beautiful sequences that will have you just like stunned and amazed because of how beautiful it is, and then there are a lot of like heart-wrenching moments where it's like, oh my god, are they going to survive this? Is everything going to be okay? To there being some moments of laughs, and then there being some of the fun, whimsical moments whenever they're at the refugee camp and they're kind of seeing the beauties of humanity again. And I really, really like how this movie feels like a true family road trip movie, even though at the heart it is a very nitty and gritty war movie. But yeah, that being said, if I had to give this movie a score on a scale of 1 to 100, I would give it probably a 91. It is a really, really good movie. Very few problems here and there. I feel like occasionally there are sequences that feel like they go on for a little longer than I think they should. But ultimately, I think that it does pretty much everything you would want from this movie. I think that there's a lot of really interesting soundtrack decisions. Some of them that I'm like, okay, this makes sense. Some of them that I'm like, that's a little more questionable. And there are a lot of really beautiful moments of silence that I really like as well. But yeah, that being said, that was it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. I love and appreciate you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe, and I will hopefully see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bow. Bow, bow.
Back at it again, but that's a relevant flow. So smooth, they calling me Mr. Elegant. Like an elephant, I got a long nose. Like a president, I've got a few hoes. Swift with a stutter, I'm smooth like butter. Don't see it coming when I slip undercover. Like a big dog, but I don't bite. I'm still a big broad, I'd win that fight. Come match you and I knock out your lights.